I'm crooked. I'm crooked. My mom is so crooked. That's what she said. Yeah. All right. No bullshit this time. We're gonna do it. We're gonna do it for real, Smalls. Aloha, nerds, and welcome back to the Salawag's White Straight Gut Reaction, where I watch things and react from the gut. I love true story. Okay, so it's 2022 now. My background has changed. I have moved. I have finally moved out of my parents' home. Good job. Good job, you pudgy Wayne. You pudgy Wayne with no Tia Carrere, but you pudgy Wayne motherfucker. Wayne's World. Yes, I now have roommates, and it's pretty much the same thing without dogs barking. So it's cool. Okay, nice. Leveling up, one piece at a time. So, okay, last year I had the pleasure of watching a lot of great stuff. Definitely my two favorite things I watched last year were Avatar The Last Airbender and True Story. Shit, let's just bang through what I've been watching real quick, and I'm gonna get to True Story, but I just want to tell you about all this great stuff. You on Netflix, I totally recommend you. If this was a list of live action favorites, it would be You as number three, Clickbait as number two, and True Story as number one. I thought You was just an awesome story of a more relatable version of what Dexter did. Dexter was much more of a show. What I appreciated about You was that it was this tight story that really encapsulated a couple obsessions, and it wasn't too much to deal with. What I love about Clickbait was it was again a tight story, really interesting interactions. The main actress, or the two main actresses, who were fantastic, uh, just really blew it out of the water for me. I was really like impressed with both the actress I was not familiar with, the blonde who was the sister of the guy who goes missing, and the actress who was in Get Out. I didn't get any of these people's names. Who, God, whoa, beautiful, holy shit! But such a great show, such a great show. Loved all the emotions, loved the different angles of storytelling. I think what You and Clickbait do that is fun, and I'm only bringing this up because it will apply to True Story later. They show different points of view. You shows the point of view mostly of the main character, and then in the second season switches points of view to his love interest. What I enjoy about Clickbait was every single episode was a different character's point of view on the same event, and it still had main characters throughout. So those were the two on the live action list, but definitely if we're talking the favorite things that I watched last year, Invincible. I read the first three volumes of that comic, and I gotta say, season one was essentially volume one, with some additions and subtractions and some moderations. I think they did a very good job in building up to that finale, but I think the comic book reveal of what happens in the final episode of Invincible, I think, hits harder because there is almost no setup for it. But I think definitely if you want to watch a great animated series that's really mature, it's really for adults. But for the person who grew up with Batman the Animated Series, Batman Beyond, and Beast Wars, Gargoyles, that darker kind of show, this is just a transition. This is just what we've been waiting for. Like TV went to this kiddie ass anime nonsense since the 2000s, and it was just like, okay, I'm out. But Invincible went goes right back to that Justice League style, but giving us the adult version. Then that's what kind of people my age are probably really looking for, and definitely the world was ready for. But definitely, best thing I watched last year was Avatar: The Last Airbender in terms of animated shows. What an incredible show! I just cannot say enough how great that show is. For a show that is meant for kids, it really had a lot of great characters, mature storytelling, really great themes, life lessons embedded in the adventures so that you can still grow and learn, but you don't feel it doesn't feel didactic, and it is about bettering yourself and understanding yourself and accepting yourself despite whatever circumstances you may have. Avatar: The Last Airbender, I think, is as close as it gets to true story as far as what I was watching, because it really is about a lot of characters who have suffered abuse. A lot of it off screen because it has to be the backstory because it's a kids show. A lot of these kid characters in Avatar: The Last Airbender suffered horrible experiences prior to the show what you see. Kids lost parents, kids were abused or tormented by their parents, or abandoned in some kind of horrible way. The main villain Zuko has this incredible arc where he goes from being this, like, seriously scarred, physically wounded, scarred person who is trying to win the approval of a father who will only continue to treat him in a horrible way as long as he grows and as long as he tries to be around him. And on the other hand, Aang, main character, has fallen in love as soon as he meets this girl, and it's just this weird innocent love story between these two tweens who they're not even fully fleshed out people yet, but they are feeling all these emotions for the first time, and they have things they've lost, and they're just trying to find some kind of hope amongst each other. And that was just a fantastic journey that when we get to that final season and those final, even regardless of how epic and amazing the finale was, the character work that gets us there is so strong and it's so emotionally powerful. I really feel that Avatar: The Last Airbender is maybe one of the greatest shows ever made. I'm going to put it right up there with Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad, Lost, Walking Dead. Just greatest shows ever made. And to that end, I am going to add True Story to that list, because this is the one I'm most excited to talk to you guys about. It really surprised me for multiple reasons and unexpected reasons. Now, let me start this off by saying I just watched, I forget the number, I just watched Kevin Hart talking to Joe Rogan. This is a podcast from 2 years ago. He's on the Joe Rogan Experience podcast. And a lot of what he talks about in that podcast, and especially in the first hour of that podcast, is a part of True Story. So, for those who don't know, True Story is a show on Netflix where Kevin Hart essentially plays a version of himself. He plays a version of himself that has been in MCU-like movies and is about to get his own new level of stardom as he becomes his own superhero and gets his own... I forget whether he's going to get a movie or a show, but they're in the talks about a lot of great things happening for him. And he is, like himself, a comedian slash actor, and also working on all these other charities and things that he wants to do. So what I find is interesting about the show is that there's a biographic aspect to it. I don't know how true to it is, but the Joe Rogan podcast, some of the first things Kevin Hart says in the first 30 minutes of that podcast are things that happen in the first episode of True Story, where Kevin Hart's just trying to go to the bathroom, and some dude won't stop stalking him outside the bathroom for a picture, and he's like, "Bro, I'll take a picture with you outside the bathroom. I'm not gonna duck you." And the dude just can't handle it, and he just can't wait. And everyone's always sticking a phone in his face and trying to get a selfie, and they're not trying to be a person with him. They don't really think of him as a person. They just kind of see him as the thing to be around and take a picture with. But he does accept it for the most part with grace and with respect and appreciation. But as the plot line unfolds, it gets very hairy for him, and you see him kind of unwind in the way he affects other people throughout this story. Because he's playing this very positive guy who's just in the zone and trying to do his thing. But Wesley Snipes plays Kevin Hart's brother in this show. And right up front, we get knowledge of some failed restaurant business that the brother tried to do that apparently Kevin Hart's character had funded. And we learn across the show that they have a long history of Kevin Hart trying to help out his brother, and his brother just ruining it for one reason or another. And Wesley Snipes plays one interesting character. Now, I am a fan of Wesley Snipes, but I wouldn't call myself like the biggest fan. I'm just like the blockbuster normie fan. I love Blade. U.S. Marshals, yeah. Tu Wong Fu, holy crap. I mean, Wesley Snipes has a lot of range just in those pictures alone. But for sure, Blade, because I'm a superhero guy. I don't know if you can tell. I love superheroes. That's my avenue into the universe. I just love superheroes. I love the mythology. I love the themes and the meanings and the importance of the stories. If you look at a story like Star Wars, you know, the ironic thing about all these angry fans is that they're angry about shitty movies, but the whole point of the Star Wars movies is about a guy who's angry and throws his emotions out there all the time and doesn't listen to anybody, but he learns to become mature and peaceful and respectful to other people. Ironically, the fans are not like that all the time. They're just fucking, you know, oh, this movie sucks. Well, you know, well, I mean, you need to watch the movie a little carefully, more carefully. It's not about you being a freaking psychotic angry fan. It's about being a good person and resisting the need to be this vicious thing. But to that end, True Story is like all the stuff I've talked about these other shows. It perfectly weaves. Like there's really good themes. The conflict between Kevin Hart and Wesley Snipes starts when Kevin Hart's just coming off the success of one of these MCU movies, and he's starting this tour. He's starting this comedy tour where he's trying to work in his charity events and all these other things he's trying to do, little photo shoots, trying to support different things. And Wesley Snipes, having just come off the failure of this restaurant, is trying to party with Kevin Hart and is trying to sort of, you know, live it up a little. But the unfortunate truth is, as soon as he tries to party with Kevin Hart, he offers him this drink, and Kevin Hart stops him and says, "No, I'm 6 months sober, dude. I don't want to do this." And so you got this brother. He's your own brother. Knows what you've been struggling with. At least knows that you don't want to be drinking. Pushing you to drink. So right off the top, you kind of see like there's something wrong here. If this is your own family member and you're enabling him to, and you're not only just enabling, you're pushing him to do something he does not want to do. But they get drinking, they start partying really hard, and they get some girls. And Kevin Hart wakes up, and the girl next to him is dead. And this starts off the whole storyline as Kevin Hart, through Wesley Snipes' pushing, tries to cover up finding the girl dead, OD'd from drugs or whatever the situation is. And that kind of situation, it's so dramatic. It's so unexpected and weird. And even the way it happens is kind of weird. Like, for me, filmmaker me is working all this and sees what's going on. I already kind of know the twist right up front. The mess, and I don't think the filmmakers even really care if you kind of detect the twist, because they have a huge setup in the very first scene that I think makes the twist very obvious. But I think the best part of the show is that it really doesn't matter whether you know the twist or not going into this first episode, because how Kevin Hart deals with everything is the most fascinating part of it. Because the first episode is very relatable. The second episode, very relatable. The third episode, very relatable. But events start to occur where you see Kevin Hart really pushed into a corner. And Billy Zane makes an appearance in this show as a gangster that Wesley Snipes is friends with. And essentially he's trying to help cover this whole situation up, but he's really trying to make the situation work for himself. And goddamn, you know, the way everyone around Kevin Hart interacts with him because of his fame and because of his money is kind of the most fascinating part of this show. Or in many ways, you know, there's Teo Rossi, who's from Sons of Anarchy, and most recently he was in the Luke Cage show. They kill him every time. He plays this fan. He plays this excited fan. And in my heart and in my head, I feel like he's playing my Instagram comments. I feel like he's literally playing my Instagram comments to all these actors. Like, oh my God, you were great in this. Oh my God. Oh, come on. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm embarrassed with myself to see myself on fucking camera. But like, you know, He's really like neurotically obsessed with Kevin Hart and just goes everywhere and follows him everywhere and can't wait to get his latest event. And they kind of have like this distanced good relationship. You see, like Kevin Hart keeps a distance with him, but appreciates him. And what I find interesting is that this show brings up a lot of different things. That when we think about social media and the interaction of fans with the people they're fans of, this kind of strange relationship that exists when you see that there's this person here. What I think the most powerful part about this show is that Kevin Hart is playing himself, struggling with fame and success. And how much do you appreciate the success versus how much do you want space for yourself? And also underneath that, he's dealing with all these people having opinions about him and his life and what he's capable of doing. And in reality, none of that is what is actually real for him. He actually has to work for the things that these people want a piece of all the time. He has to do the work to make that even happen. He has to make the deals and then follow through with those deals for any of these things to even happen. And the stresses, even though the show presents the context of this kind of murder cover up kind of scenario, it's a sort of crime scenario, we got mobsters involved. All of that is very good entertainment, but there's this kind of the real subtext of the show that I think makes it great and what makes it worth talking about is that the show is really about Kevin Hart as a real person who has his own history and has been through his own stuff. That by the time you've seen him be famous and you're obsessed with him, yes, maybe his life is good now thanks to the success, but you don't know what he went through before. And this is literally a line that he says later on in the show, where Wesley Snipes, who again is always kind of, his character is always in debt and always seems to need money from Kevin Hart for one reason or another. And you just kind of, as the story unfolds, you see so much baggage between the two because you see that Kevin Hart, who is clearly the younger brother, because Wesley Snipes is older than him, has basically supported and been the crutch for his own brother because the brother just will not, either just won't go the right way or just has the wrong way of doing things. We don't fully know what his problem is. Well, we learn kind of what his problem is later. This is going to be spoiler free as much as possible, but his problem is it just doesn't make sense when you look at Kevin Hart and the way he goes. You think if someone's going to focus that well, and that's in your own family, why can't you do that? But then that's the real thing too. In real life, not everyone can do the same thing, even if you're under the same roof or have the same family member. That doesn't mean that you can achieve the same thing. And not that you can't, but you may have your own life. But you see how people treat Wesley Snipes as, oh, you're the brother, take the picture. And that kind of the way people they take other people for granted. Now you think about when you grow up and you're a kid and you look at teachers, you take your teachers for granted. You don't think that they're a person paying their bills who has a mission to either just survive just like anybody else, or they really do want to teach you. You don't know any of that. I think people have this horrible problem of taking each other for granted constantly. Constantly. And I've definitely experienced it in my own life where people look at me, they look at how I'm doing. I'm not even doing like it's not like I have my own apartment or anything. I have a house, I've lived with my family for the majority of my life. I just turned 32. I just moved out. And people look at my life and they take me for granted. And they say, well, clearly you had the best life ever and just don't know suffering. Like, excuse me, but you don't know a goddamn thing about my life. And I don't need to hear you make those kind of fucking assumptions about me. I relate to that so hard. Like, you look at my skin color and you make assumptions. You look at the way I behave. If I'm respectful, I'm fun, I'm goofy. I don't talk in any kind of way that would make you think I've been through anything. But I've been through a lot. And I really, really related to that aspect of Kevin Hart's character, that the most relatable part about this show is not that he's a famous guy struggling with fame, but that he is a guy who people take for granted. And they don't understand that he has his own life and his own pains and struggles that you are never, ever going to hear about because he just doesn't want you to know about it. He doesn't want you to feel that. He wants you to feel the positivity. He wants you to feel hope. He's talking. There's one scene, I think it's in the second episode, where he's talking to this kid with cancer, and the kid is like, "I'm not going to live very long," and it's a little white kid, and he comes up with, and he says something really funny, and Kevin Hart is like, "Huh," and he genuinely thinks it was funny. He's like, "I'm gonna," I can't remember if he says that I'm gonna have you open for me, or if I'm gonna use your joke, but in either case, he says something very supportive to the kid that just really makes the kid feel good. But you see that Kevin Hart means it. And that at the heart of Kevin Hart's character is this really well meaning, genuine person who wants to do good. That even if you look at the relationship with the brother, he wants to lift his brother up. But the brother keeps pulling him down. And but even at the end, I feel like even with everything that they go through by the final episode, I don't feel at all that Kevin Hart, if circumstances didn't roll out the way they do, I think he would have still tried to support his brother to the end, if not for how things roll out in the show. I really don't want to spoil it because for those who don't catch the twist in the very first 5 seconds of this show, it's a worth watching to the end. But I think even if you can tell what the twist is, watch to the final episode. I think there's a confrontation in the last 20 minutes of the final episode between Kevin Hart and Wesley Snipes, where all the baggage, and definitely baggage that Kevin Hart didn't even know he had because he just comes to some very important information, this stuff comes up in their final conversation with each other. And there's a look on Wesley Snipes' face. What I appreciate, let me just sidebar here. Wesley Snipes is a fucking great actor. Blade is not great because, oh, I watched Clint Eastwood and I know that action heroes are silent and quiet and tough and blah, 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 blah. Blade is a great character because he's silent and tough, but he's got specific baggage and he's got specific pains that make him Blade. Wesley Snipes can play those agonies and he can play those emotions and really nail the character. That character is great because he imbues that very, very, very specific perspective of who that character is. But he can also play Demolition Man and be a guy who's very likable and fun. He's as big as Nicolas Cage is in that movie, but he's still playing the bad guy. Or Tu Wong Fu, where he's playing a tranny. This is a guy who can. I've seen him play big. I did see Undisputed and the movie he did, that the David Goyer's first directing piece. But I think Undisputed is one of the few movies I've seen of Wesley Snipes where he wasn't playing such a big character. And it was really great to watch Wesley Snipes in this movie play the complete opposite of Kevin Hart. Kevin Hart is playing a version of himself that you already like him and relate to him. And actually, I think that's the best avenue into this show, because if Kevin Hart is so famous that you can't separate him from any role that he plays now. Anything he played before he was famous, he does disappear. But now that he's famous, it's just so hard to separate. So actually having him play himself, he gets so much great dramatic range. I think this is absolutely Kevin Hart's best performance. But for Wesley Snipes, it was so cool seeing him play this kind of real guy. Wesley Snipes felt like a guy I've run into on the street. He felt like a guy I probably met, I don't know, doing something at some point some point in my life in San Francisco. He's just kind of he's kind of chill. He's kind of a little too chill, but he's got stuff going on up here. He's just real and he's just raw and he's just kind of, he's kind of low key. But he does have a bubbling intensity inside of him. And seeing his face when Kevin Hart confronts him in the final, like I said, the final 20 minutes of this show, when Kevin Hart confronts him with the truth, seeing Wesley Snipes' face, just the the all of what he's feeling in that moment, it was so great. I was like, whoa, that that you know. I felt a similar thing for Ron Perlman in the finale of Hand of God, that the first season. I was just like, oh, that expression, the suffering, and the feeling of, I don't want to say the word because it gives it away, but the feeling of what Kevin Hart lays on him, and his just, he's kind of like in shock, but at the same time knows that this was coming, and knows he kind of deserves what Kevin Hart says to him. And it's so real, it's so painful and real. Their interaction, and even the way it's shot feels so natural, and it feels like, God, I just heard the worst conversation between two people I never wanted to hear in my life. I mean, I would have never guessed that Kevin Hart and Wesley Snipes would be so good next side by side. I would have never guessed. But this context and this scenario, it's so good. The performance between the two of them is definitely the performance between the two of them against each other. Their quality against each other is so rich and so real. And it feels like a real relationship that you could just walk into. That if you were friends with either one of these people, you'd be seeing these conflicts occur. I think that's the best quality about this show. This show feels the most like something that's happening right now, because in many ways it is. I think if you look at any star and some of the drama and leaks and things that they've gone through, they are just people. This is the thing, we are all just people. We take each other for granted to no end. you know, I could get into some, social issues, but I'm not going to do that right now. But if you just look at, even with the relationship between Kevin Hart and Wesley Snipes, there's a beautiful scene between Teo Rossi and the two of them, where he sees Wesley Snipes and goes, "Oh, it's you! You're his brother! Oh, I know everything about you! Oh my God! If things had gone differently, you would have been the famous person." And just that moment of recognition you see hits Wesley Snipes in a particular kind of way. But because of everything that's going on, he can't enjoy the moment. But he does get a little moment of this recognition that he does have something great inside of him. But he just keeps going about the wrong way of getting it. He keeps trying to manipulate. Like when he's drinking with Kevin Hart in the first episode, as soon as they start drinking, he brings up, "Oh, how about a little bit more money for the restaurant?" He's already manipulating the dude, and he's his own brother. And when you learn later that there's been many failed attempts to help out Wesley Snipes' character, that is painful. To think that this guy is pulling this stuff on his own brother after so many years of all this stuff. And that's what makes the final episode so much harder. Like I said, regardless of whether you see the twist coming or not, when you see these interactions, I cannot describe to you how real it feels. I think it's as close as it gets to live action drama feeling like it's the documentary, because I just think these guys are so real. Just great show. Teo Rossi's great. It's just, I hope I'm saying your name right, dude, because you're awesome. But damn, man, I just was really impressed by the show. And I gotta say this. There is a fight between Kevin Hart and Wesley Snipes. They about midway through the show, these two have all this baggage that's just been building up for about 3 or 4 episodes, and Kevin Hart and Wesley Snipes have both just had enough of each other. And you see Kevin Hart go at Wesley Snipes, and he's just like so feral, and you think, oh man, he might have a chance. And Wesley Snipes just fucking picks this dude up and chucks him across the room like a fucking rag doll. And when you see Kevin Hart smash against the wall, you're just like, oh my god. You damn, dude. Like, you appreciate Kevin Hart for being so feral, but goddamn, you know you're fighting Blade, dude. Blade is not gonna fall over for you. And Blade just, you know, it's a fucked up battle on Kevin Hart's side. But that was interesting. There's a lot going on this show, and it's just very well written, very well directed, very well cast, very. I just really got to shout out this show. I just really got to shout out this show. There's no reason for me to go into spoilers because I can't. I'll just repeat what I just said. Wesley Snipes' reaction when that final reveal happens, it's brutal, and it just feels so authentic, and it just feels like so many. And I think when you look back and you see Wesley Snipes' reactions to certain things that both Kevin Hart does and happens to him, there's something about his reactions then, Wesley Snipes' reactions, that don't feel authentic. And you should pay attention to that feeling, because when he finally acts authentic, it's because your brother's had enough. So that was interesting. I just gotta say, just fantastically well done show. I didn't write down all the credits. I should have wrote down the writer credits. I wanted to shout out to the creator, who is Eric Newman. He was a producer on a lot of good stuff. I just wrote down a few: Children of Men, Narcos, and Narcos Mexico, Bright, and apparently Bright 2. Did that come out? Are they making that? I don't know. And Slither, I freaking love. If you love James Gunn's Peacemaker, which is a pretty good show so far, if you love James Gunn's Peacemaker and Suicide Squad, The Suicide Squad, if you love all that, you gotta watch Slither. This is one of my favorite movies of all time in terms of horror. Slither is a great James Gunn written and directed movie, and you see a lot of his personality traits come out there. And his filmmaking style, I think, is so sharp, and he's just got everything down tight in that movie. I think Slither's a really good movie to watch. And this dude, Eric Newman, goes back to producing Dawn of the Dead. I mean, this guy is... he's been around for a while doing some great stuff. But I gotta shout out to the director, because first of all, I noticed Stephen Williams as one of the directors of this show. He directed 3 episodes, and he was a director back on Lost. The Lost is absolutely my favorite show. I love Lost. I think I probably relate the most to Lost, even though it doesn't feel as authentic as True Story. It does have great stories and is well done. But Stephen Williams was one of the main directors. He directed 26 episodes of that show. And it was always him and Jack Bender. And I always just noticed their names because they directed so much of it. And dang, man, I was like, dude, man, great job. Great job. I think between Stephen Williams... And Stephen Williams also directed episodes for Watchmen, the Watchmen show that came out. That was pretty good. How to Get Away with Murder, Ray Donovan. He goes back as far as Dark Angel. He was directing for James Cameron's Dark Angel with Jessica Alba. So that was great seeing you. Great seeing your name again. And the other director who directed actually more episodes was Hanelle M. Culpepper. I hope I'm saying your name right. Who was a director on Star Trek Picard, Nosferatu, Mayans MC, SWAT, Supergirl, Flash, Gotham. She's directed a whole bunch. Her credits just go on. So I just really want to shout out to those directors, because you guys achieved the authenticity that you should feel. I think my biggest problem with most television is that it does not feel cinematic. And this is in many ways why there was a divide between, the film actor is the great actor and the TV actor is not. Because television is made on a budget. It is the working man's entertainment. Anybody can watch it. You just turn on your TV, if you have one. If you have one. But, anyway. My biggest problem with television most of the time is that it doesn't feel cinematic. I feel like TV wastes a lot of time deliberately. It's trying to run the hours, it's trying to run the clock, and just kind of make up scenarios that kind of keep things going, but it's not cinematic. It doesn't go to montages, it doesn't cross time, it doesn't tell the story first. It does everything it can to just run the time. I think that's the worst aspect of most television. I think what I've all the shows I've mentioned so far, and especially with True Story, the best thing about True Story is how authentic every episode feels. I feel like I'm just walking around with Kevin Hart in real life until the movie stuff, the plot stuff happens, and then I'm like, I don't know if you're dealing with covering up a murder in real life, Kevin Hart, but I certainly hope not. But that's the best quality about this movie. Like I said, when we get to Wesley Snipes' reaction, the ending really is a surprise. The twist is not the surprise; it's the ending that's the surprise. The twist of the twist is what's interesting. That's the great thing about True Story is it sets up two questions. First of all, does Kevin Hart get caught? And we don't even know what he's supposed to be caught for. And the second one is he actually going to hide this murder? And the show plays this fantastic up and down game of feeling like he will or he won't. He will, he won't. He will, he won't. It's literally like they were like, the structure of the show is in this episode he will get away. In this episode, he's not going to get away. In this episode, he will get away. In this episode, he won't get away. It's kind of almost like a book as well, like that kind of sense of growing tension, growing fear. We have the involvement of these mobsters who are very creepy, and they are a bit, yeah, they're racist. But at the same time, Wesley Snipes' character, the way he behaves, you kind of get some justified reasons why people think of him that way. Because of the way he behaves. Like his character behaves in ways that are so bizarre and so strange. He only appears to be normal most of the time. Whereas Kevin Hart is living such a bizarre, strange life, but he really is just in his heart a normal, or he wants to be a normal guy. He does not want to be weird and strange and messed up. But he can't help both his own history and the person who's closest to him in his life, his brother, who he wants to help so badly. And that conflict is the juicy meat that makes up this show. That is the best thing about this show is that it is well made from beginning to end. At no point do I feel like they dropped the ball. I think some people who see the twist coming in the first 5 minutes might be a little taken aback. But I think for those who can kind of accept that and kind of enjoy it for what it is, and then when you really get to the ending, the truth be told, I think the best quality of the show is that it does its best to be cinematic while still being a show. You feel like you're experiencing authentic moments while it's still a show. It's still got episode to episode, but it blends so smoothly. I think you can totally tell in a lot of shows one director from another, and that's a bad thing. Sometimes. Because you can see some shows just have terrible acting. It's like, why is the acting bad in this episode? Because in the last episode, I saw some of the best acting of all time, Heroes. And I think I'm sorry, Heroes. But Heroes does have that problem where sometimes the effects are amazing and the acting's great, and sometimes it's kind of both from the writing and directing point of view. But the best thing about True Story is that it is consistent. There's a consistent style and tone and feeling, and the writing and the character dialogue feels like it's done all by the same people. I think you had that for sure. I think clickbait is kind of weird because it follows different characters, so it doesn't really matter if it's the same because each character kind of has their own genre of life going on, so that's kind of interesting. But I think you also had that great feeling of being consistent. But I think True Story just hit what I always feel TV should hit. Like if you're gonna be a TV show, tell a story. Don't be afraid of montages. Don't be afraid of telling the story as it would unfold in the most interesting way possible. At no point did I ever feel like, oh, this episode is just here to pad out I think that's the worst part of episodic television is when you get that pad out episode. Like, oh, okay, so you're just showing lots of flashbacks, or, oh, they're just in one location, so you can get one more episode out of these characters. And they sometimes overdevelop or develop things that should be saved for the finale, and they have to use it here because they need it. They have another episode, they got stuff to do. And for this show, it's what is it, 6 or 7 episodes? It's really tight. It's really well done. From top to bottom, great writing, great directing, great performances. Great performances. I want more of both Kevin Hart and Wesley Snipes teaming up. I think that would be hilarious. I think Kevin Hart teaming up with any of the people in this show would be an interesting show because all the actors are great. I'm not mentioning the other names because this is really a Kevin Hart, Wesley Snipes two-piece, two-hander. Kevin Hart is the main character, but this is so much about these two guys and what they're going through, and it's very, very distinct and upfront in the first 3 episodes that's what this is about. They really stay focused and tell their story. And like I said, even though there's some plot twists and tropes that are a bit familiar, they don't feel familiar. They feel like these are things that these people would do given the situation they're in. I think that's the best part. Well, there's so many best parts about this show. It deserves. Go watch it. If you haven't watched True Story, you gotta check it out. Not to be confused with the True Story movie with Jonah Hill, which I did think this was at first. I was like, wait a minute, True Story is a show now? I'm confused. But yeah, so that's my recommendation, and those are the reasons why I feel it was a great show. Please check it out. Let me know if you agree, and if you disagree, that's totally fine. Just please be respectful in your comments. That's all I ask. I've already been a disrespectful asshat in comments and all that stuff, and I feel like a butthead, and I feel like even my love comments are a little too much these days. So, but let's all try to be respectful and peaceful. The world is always going to be full of shit and full of danger and full of awful people and people who take each other for granted. So let's stop doing that. I think that's the best message of the show. Stop taking people for granted. People are not just a thing for you. People are people. They have the same pains, feels, fears, all that stuff. And I think Kevin Hart exemplifies that he has baggage, but he chooses to appreciate the people around him, and the people around him know when things are wrong with him because they know him. That's the great thing about the interactions in this show, is that he has this support team around him who all know that something's wrong with him because they've seen him go through the trials and struggles and tribulations. They know how he's behaving, even though he's covering something up and hiding things from them. They know something's off. They know it. And like true friends, they try to help him at every point, and he always knows, like, I should have just done what this person said. I should have just done with what my first instinct was. And that's another aspect of the show too. The show is very much about your self-honesty and growing and acknowledging what you need to do and just putting that first. And this show covers so many aspects of what it is to be a person. And even Teo Rossi has these frustrations with Kevin Hart. It's like, because Kevin Hart, in being frustrated with his situation he's trying to hide from, takes some of his anger out on Teo Rossi, his biggest fan. And Teo Rossi, I'm not going to get into too many spoilers, but he inadvertently gets involved in the scenario, and Kevin Hart tries to basically sweeten the deal and say, hey, nothing's going on. Why don't you come be my best friend now? And Teo Rossi witnesses Kevin Hart be very, very mean to one of his fans. Very despicably mean to one of his fans. And the fan had interacted with him in an earlier episode, repeating the N-word, which was one of his jokes, and confronts him saying, you did not need to be mean to me. I just repeated what you said in a joke. And Teo Rossi, having witnessed the whole thing, confronts him like, do you hate your fans? I mean, what's up with you? What is your deal? Like, you've kind of treated me funny. You totally were mean to that guy, and he had a right to say what he did. He had a right to say what he said. You did do these things, and it's like, there's a lot of what I appreciate about the show. It does not give you a didactic answer for how to behave. It does not say, don't say that joke, you white man saying the N word. But essentially, it does say that. But it doesn't say it by saying, don't do it, like verbally saying it. But you see the interactions that it makes them uncomfortable. But at the same time, the guy has a total point. This joke is the basis of your fame and why people like you. So it's kind of not fair for you to be mad at someone for them to throw it back at you. That really makes no. To point out that kind of conflict is very interesting. It's very interesting. You know what I mean? And the same with rap music. You know, if someone's reciting lines from rap music, they're celebrating someone who made art and they're reciting their lines, but they should feel uncomfortable because they like that music. Is that what you're saying? Exactly what's the line here? And I think the show it just brings it up. I think that's and even with the fan interactions, even if we take out that specific aspect, how should you interact with the fan? How should the fan interact with you? And at the end of the day, I think the message is just be a person, just be human. Because Kevin Hart's biggest problem at the end of the day is like, Wesley Snipes are my brother, and you did not treat me like a brother. You have treated me like a little cash cow, like a little piggy bank for all these things, and at the end of the day, you're the most poisonous person in my life. And that's this is a spoiler, but I'm not saying what he's actually saying. I'm just kind of the subtext of what he's saying. This is not the actual what he says. Uh, and that kind of reality, like how should we behave as people amongst each other, is the real theme and the real material that stands out in this show. That's what the show is really about. It's about how should we behave with each other, not about fame. It's not about this or that or the other. It's how should we treat each other. Take each other for granted. Take advantage. Someone offers you something, should you take it? Should you take it knowing that they're only offering it to you for a reason? All of this is kind of brought up as like it's and nothing is answered. It's really left to you to think about. I think the intelligent and thoughtful considerations and examining each thing, because I'm sure Kevin Hart has had his bad days where he probably either shat on a fan or said some bad shit about a fan that maybe he wish he didn't said, or at least has been around other celebrities, hearing them act that way or treat fans that way. And he's, to me, this has got to be some form of expression for that. Because again, like I said, Teo Rossi is playing my Instagram comments, so I just feel like, man, that's how relevant today. But also, I think it still goes backward in time and forward in time. How are we supposed to interact with each other? What is proper behavior supposed to look like? And I think the show, like I said, it doesn't give you the answer, but it lets you think about what that answer should be. And that is what real writing is supposed to be. Now, some things like Planet of the Apes say, we blew it up, we ruined everything. And it essentially is the sad warning of all civilization. But then this is just talking about humanity. This is just talking about people in general, how we should go forward from this moment on. Because we are in a very specific time period dealing with specific things. But these issues are always going to be our concerns as society changes and things go. And I think hats off to this show. Salute to this show. True Story is a fantastic piece of writing, directing, performing, all of it. Production design. Every single aspect of this show is top notch. And it exemplifies what film and TV are supposed to do. You know, Your Honor was great. It was great seeing Bryan Cranston play the lawyer, the judge version of Breaking Bad, but this feels real. This feels authentic. This doesn't feel like drama played for drama's sake. And at no point do I feel like, oh, that was just there to be surprising for me so that I could just go, oh, because those are the worst. Those are the worst. You know, when you watch Usual Suspects and you get to the reveal at the end of that movie, it feels like it makes sense. And in fact, it informs the entire movie. It makes the entire movie make more sense when you realize what the reveal is. And in the case of True Story, I think not that it makes the whole movie make sense. I think it adds up as the math should. You know, when you're doing algebra and you can't get the equation right, and someone shows you, oh no, this, you're supposed to use parentheses, and then you do the adding. You know, Pam does. When you finally get your order of operations right, you know how the math should look, and that's how this show feels. Like, this feels right to me. This feels real to me, and I really love that kind of thing. Lost had a handful of episodes that felt real and felt like that. Stephen Williams. And I applaud every show that goes for the gold. Go for the gold. Even if you're making a fantasy, go for the gold. What I love about Maniac is another one of my favorite shows starring Jonah Hill. And Jonah Hill feels the most authentic. Jonah Hill feels like the most authentic part of that movie. And I relate the most to him because he's on the total opposite side of Kevin Hart. He's dealing with his own madness because he's a maniac. But every time he reacts to the situations he's in, I always felt like that feels right. But to me, to have an entire show feel right, but you know, Maniac is dealing with dreams. To have an entire show feel natural and real is an achievement that should be celebrated. So that being said, whether you love it, really love True Story. Highly recommend. Those are really my thoughts. So if you have seen it, please let me know. Do you agree? Were any of these thoughts interesting to you? Or you're like, I thought about all that already. The Salawag, shut the fuck up. That's totally fine. So please remember to give me a thumbs down. Or actually, don't like in any direction. How about don't subscribe? I don't care. Whatever. Who gives a shit? No. So that's what I have to say on True Story. Really highly So that's what I have to say on True Story. I cannot recommend it enough. Thank you so much for watching. For those who got bored the right way and enjoyed this, thank you very much. For those who didn't, don't like, don't subscribe, and don't comment. Thank you very much, and catch you next time.